So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, coming to you, wherever you are, watching this live or watching later at 11:40 hours GMT on Tuesday, 28th of December 2021. This is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. KhoodeelaarTV is a campaign rallying call that I devised. KhoodeelaarTV is a Siloti word. It's a joint word created by combining more than two words. One is the root, which is the short meaning is digging or dig or diggers, if you like, can use in more than one sense. And then there is the implied kind of active factor as a third party. It's a reference to the third party or a third party or a collection of third parties. KhoodeelaarTV, and the last one, lar, is an active continuing tense. And it was originally intended in December 2003 when I decided to coin the action word, if you like, after discussing the then imminent plot by the UK government department in the name of transport, Department DFT, which we share with the Private Lie magazine, as we call DFT daft, as stupid, colloquial stupid. So the KhoodeelaarTV campaign at that point was devised in December 2003 after I discussed that Crossrail plot to dig a hole in Brick Lane with K. Jordan, while she and I walked from Brick Lane towards the place called Bishopsgate, which we crossed into the side bus road on top of the Liverpool Street Underground complex. And the bus station, the depot of the bus station, she had to catch a bus back home in Kentish Town, which is in Camden. And KhoodeelaarTV had or has had or does have three angles. One is that the enemies of the society or the community or the people are engaged already in digging a hole, digging us, the community, out of the area. And also it means they're about to do it if we don't stop it. And that they have been waiting to dig us out of the area for indefinite period of time. Remember yesterday and in the previous editions of this, we talked about the Sunday Times Color magazine article, byline to Leslie Garner, a racist woman. And the piece was headed in the Sunday Times Color magazine, dated the 2nd of December 1973. That piece was headed, "The World Beyond the Curtains." The curtains is like the burqa, curtains on the window, to bring it up to date by several decades. What Boris Johnson called in his anti-Muslim, expressly anti-Muslim, incitement of hatred, comparing Muslim women wearing burqas looking like bank robbers. So the world beyond the curtains that Leslie Garner's piece was headlined used as the headline in the piece in the Sunday Times Color supplement, dated the 2nd of December 1973, was about the particular modesty that is represented in the curtains behind which she, Leslie Garner, imagined the mainly Muslim women in Brick Lane to be hiding or existing behind or beneath. And she painted what Leslie Garner painted, a kind of tale of backwardness and a tale of uncivilization, was decades later reproduced under the guise of a fiction funded by an American imperialistic publisher who paid in advance anything between £1 million and more to a then unknown quote writer whom they discovered and invented in order to maximize the lying propaganda against the Silotis, Muslims, Bangladeshis associated with the Brick Lane, just as the collective target of the Leslie Garner piece in the Sunday Times, dated the 2nd of December 1973, had been. So they updated, if you like, the logistics. They changed the name of the person who wrote it, and they bribed that person, and they changed some of the other stuff. And they started at the beginning of this century. So the Monica Ali piece was, let's say, 73, 83, 93, 2003, 83, 93, 2000, 30 years later. But Leslie Garner was hiding in a cave of racist backwardness, and she sprang out of the cave and launched her updated attack on the people who were protesting against the latest version of the attack on the Silotis, the Muslims, the Bangladeshis of Brick Lane. And she endorsed Monica Ali as strongly as she could, as backwardly, as stupidly as she could. So we shall be talking more about that, and we shall be continuing that later. This is the daily buying and bribing Boris Johnson graph, which has got again on front page a trailer featuring the photograph of Celia Walden. Celia Walden had been writing regularly for the same title before the title actually became the buyer of the soul, and the briber of Boris Johnson. And Celia Walden was doing that for quite a long time before she even met Piers Morgan, to whom she is married now. What she is doing now, since Piers Morgan was effectively sacked by the ITV company, television company, under pressure put on the ITV company by the legal kind of demands by Meghan Markle, whom Piers Morgan had targeted for attack in order to ingratiate himself with the so-called British racist establishment. In other words, Piers Morgan, that's Celia Walden. And what Celia Walden is doing in the actual piece on page 24 is elaborating on what she calls "you, dear reader, are the power behind my pen." Well, what she is doing is continuing Piers Morgan's agenda, racist agenda. Because until Piers Morgan got booted out by ITV company, who didn't kick him out because of any morality or ethics or principles, but they were forced to do that because they knew that Piers Morgan had actually made several racist comments that would be found to have been racist if Meghan Markle took ITV company to court. Why? Because the decision, the ruling in the High Court in London that Meghan Markle has actually obtained against the Daily Mail on Sunday, that is Mail on Sunday, over the Mail on Sunday's invasion of her privacy concerning her letter to her father. That shows that despite the fact that the rest of Fleet Street remains hostile to Meghan Markle as part of the racist agenda to continuously, ceaselessly, prejudicially, intentionally malign her. That is the case. That is even the case in today's Daily Scar, which is published by Reach Company, which owns the Daily Mirror as well. And we shall come to that about the Daily Scar's attack on Harry later. What the Celia Walden pieces are doing now, since Piers Morgan was ousted by the ITV company, as I said, reluctantly, is continuing surreptitiously Morgan's agenda against the likes of Meghan Markle. And what she is doing in the main copy on page 24 of the Daily Buying Boris Johnson graph, is attacking mainly anti-racist people, black people, and people who want what they mean by woke Anyone who is against racism, against imperialism and imperialistic symbols like the statues, and other people who oppose other vestiges and symbols of imperialism and racism, they are collectively denounced as woke. It's a very difficult concept because if the racists call the anti-racists any names and denounce them because they were opposed to racism, then their racism, the racist racism, would have been immediate. And so therefore, they have devised a word that is called woke, and it doesn't immediately attack anti-racists or campaigners against racism. So it's a crafty word that they have devised. But its craftiness, its craft, and its surreptitious nature of that, or disguise of that word, disguise that word actually represents and denotes. Woke denotes a disguise. It doesn't directly kind of abuse anti-racists or anti-imperialists or people who campaign for equality, etc., etc. There are certain issues that are covered by the woke kind of targeting. But in the main, they are not mainstream issues. They are controversial, even among the people who are on the side of equality and diversity and all the rest of it. Now, yesterday, that is Monday, the 24th of December, Fleet Street papers carried, almost all of them carried some sort of coverage on the passing of Desmond Tutu. And almost all of them, in some way, recognized Desmond Tutu's role in opposing racism and apartheid, and they even used the concept of human rights. Now, that is, human rights is very much the target of the racists who disguise themselves as anti-woke. I hope this is clear, because this is a battle of ideas, the battle of intellectual, moral, and ethical battle against the racists. And Celia Walden has, it seems, been recruited by Piers Morgan to do his bidding, because Celia Walden had not been as discredited or become as notorious as Piers Morgan has been. So he's using her as his front. Because in the previous years, as I said, before she even met Piers Morgan and before she married him, Celia Walden was writing less racistly, let's say, and with less hostility to the idea of concepts of human rights, universality, etc., etc. But she has kind of been forced by Moron to publicly plead with ITV and others and other media kind of owners and controllers to give Piers Morgan a platform. So it's not like I'm making it up. She has come out as the face and name of Piers Morgan, while Piers Morgan hides behind the curtains. Does it make sense? Pierce Moron is behind the curtains, racist curtains that Celia Walden is providing for him. Okay, that's the kind of introduction. Let's see her main piece today, where she is actually reiterating and perpetrating racism under the heading, "You, dear reader, are the power behind my pen." That's a lie. Because although the same variety and mix of readers' comments would have greeted any other writer on the same platform, the fact that Celia Walden has chosen to focus on the very things that Pierce Moron would have focused on if he were writing this shows that it is the moron who is behind her pen. It's the prejudice of Pierce Moron that is behind Celia Walden's pen. And it says in the highlight, "You care passionately about British values and the erosion of your cultural identity." Now, what does she mean by that? British values is not something that the owners of the daily buying Boris Johnson graph devised. It was now when she does the service, the bidding of racists like Pierce Moron, what Celia Walden forgets is that quite apart from her passionate readers whom she hides under, there are the facts. For example, the facts today, yesterday, let's go back to yesterday. Yesterday's Fleet Street papers had no alternative, no option but to give acknowledgement to Desmond Tutu. Now, what did he fight for? Desmond Tutu fought for an end to the kind of racism that Celia Walden is claiming is the power behind her pen. Of course, I have explained that the real mover behind Celia Walden these days is, of course, Pierce Moron, whom she is married to. So what would she say about the considerable space given by Fleet Street papers to a most highly profiled opponent of racism, opponent of British values. By British values, Celia Walden is, of course, referring to the precise racist values, the racist prejudices, the racist hatred, the hostility. So there wouldn't be any discussion in the letters pages of either the Tory graph, which is now the daily buying Boris Johnson graph, or of the Times, or indeed of the Guardian. How many people actually write to the letters editor of these three papers, and how many get any space when they write against racism, against imperialism, against apartheid? The daily buying Boris Johnson graph, of course, is the paper that supported Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher openly condemned Nelson Mandela as a terrorist. And Desmond Tutu would be condemned by her in equal measure. But because Tutu was not the leader of the political campaign that Nelson Mandela was, Margaret Thatcher didn't have the excuse to attack Desmond Tutu in the same hostile way. And Celia Walden, of course, is writing this piece in order to have a go at Markle. Because Meghan Markle is the reason why Piers Morgan has been ousted from the spot on the ITV Good Morning Britain slot. And Celia Walden is not hiding her agenda, attacking the very person who was the reason for her husband's loss of the spot. Now, anyone can look up the phrase British values and they will come across at some point the role played in 2006 by Gordon Brown, and that is linked to his speech given at a Fabian Society do. Now, as we said before, not today, but as one of the narratives, we have said that none of the actual original concepts of morality, ethics, and humanity and human rights that were appreciated unreservedly and very strongly by those who were behind the vigorous, at least in terms of intellectual expressions and kind of comments underlying the foundation of the United Nations organization. And as I said before, many of the people who contributed intellectually to the founding of the United Nations organization in the 1940s after the end of the Second European War. Came from the UK. Many of the people came from the UK because many of them had direct experience of the campaign to stop the Nazis, stop the fascists. And others had less direct kind of, if you like, engagement, but were thinking along the same lines that we must never have wars like that again. What the constant attack on Meghan Markle by Fleet Street, via Fleet Street, is showing is that at least those forces that are driving the hatred against Meghan Markle are also the forces that are driving the racist intolerance in this country. Racist intolerance, not just in Fleet Street on the public platforms, but racist intolerance in the practice of the actual government and the practice of the elected parliament and the practices of the judiciary. Remember, I have referred to the ruling by the High Court against the Associated Press, the Mail on Sunday, attack, invasion of privacy of Meghan Markle, without condemning the courts on that occasion in that statement. I qualify that absence of condemnation by adding that when I say that the English court system is corrupt, racist, and criminal, and is essentially a prostitute bureaucracy, I don't include people like Meghan Markle who happen to have millions and millions of pounds at their disposal to buy the services of these prostitute courts. And that is what the ruling against the Associated Press, the owners of the Mail on Sunday, represents. The court ruling was bought by huge sums of money being available to Meghan Markle, who could pay the prostitute lawyers or licensed law traders. I hope I have clearly clarified and qualified that reference. Now, Celia Walden, as I have said before she met Piers Morgan, who had, before he met Celia Walden, as one of his previous friends or girlfriends, the woman called the Guardian columnist, who we have been talking about in the last 24 hours. Marina Hyde. And Marina Hyde we have posted about in relation to the reference to her in the current issue of Private Lie. This is the one. And the number is 1563, dated 18th of December 2021 to 6th of January 2022. And in the piece about her, in the section called Street of Shame, streets, Marina Hyde is mentioned, and they're hiding their own tactic in attacking Marina Hyde because they wanted to have a go at her after she got yet again an award for her column. So they have hidden their purpose. And not in the street of shame on page 11. They said that the Guardian columnist Marina Hyde was suitably scathing about what she called the clusterfuckery surrounding the Downing Street party revelations. What they're talking about is the fact that Seamus Milne took a job as a director of communications to Labour leader of the opposition Jeremy Corbyn in October 2015, and the Guardian, where Milne was employed, allowed him, that is Milne, to retain his position as associate editor of the Guardian and merely take an unpaid leave for the first 15 months of his career as a spin doctor. So that is the Marina Hyde that preceded Celia Walden as the girlfriend, if you like, of Pierce Moron, who has children, but I don't want to go into too many details about listing who the mother of his children or mothers of his children are. Fact remains that it is the identity of the same person, Marina Hyde, that I wanted to refer to. So before Celia Walden met Pierce Moron, let alone become his girlfriend and then become his wife, Celia Walden did write some stuff that even I found worth mentioning without any adverse comment about those. Not so anymore, because she has been contaminated, and in a brothel sense of the collective role of Fleet Street, she has become part of the brothel, lying to order. Lying to. Here is a piece about Allegra Stratton in the Private Lie on page 29, written by E.J. Tribb, who is widely suspected as being Richard Ingram's. And it says, lines on the departure of Allegra Stratton, Prime Ministerial aide. And the contents are as follows. So, farewell then, Allegra Stratton. Boo-hoo, that was your catchphrase. You were the spokesperson who never said anything. And now we can see why. You did COP26, then copped it. Will there be a leaving party? Ha ha ha. What's the answer? Now, this is not E.J. Tribb in rhyme. He hardly is. What E.J. Tribb specializes in is unrhymed lines about people who had departed from the scene, mainly people who have died. But this time it's people who have shifted away from the platform. So this is what the Allegra Stratton thing is about. Now, most of my lines are, well, most of the lines that I have published are political, ethical, and moral, and I would say of higher ethical substance than anything that E.J. Trib has published in Private Life. And yet there has been one racist criminal using a pseudonym who would comment on my online lines and mock the fact that I didn't have any regular rhymes or, to the racist, worthwhile lines or rhymes. To that racist liar, whatever gender, I have a few ideas about who this racist liar was or has been. If that racist liar is watching this, your racism doesn't stop me writing what I truthfully want to write. But what your racism does is confirm your existence and the fact that you are stupid. Now, Celia Walden and Richard Ingrams, let's say. Ingrams was the kind of longest in post editor of Private Lie after the Lie was founded. And Ingrams is listed as having been a friend of the late Paul Foote and some of the others who were closely associated with Private Lie. Now, Private Lie doesn't contain the same style as the daily buying Boris Johnson group, and it doesn't directly attack the woke in the same way. But I shall spend the next few minutes about Private Lie. The Private Lie craftily kind of operated by various disguises by Ian Pissoff and Frantic Swine. But it's a racist, very racist, satirical, so-called satirical magazine. Because there is no mention, there is no coverage of the phenomenon of racism, which is central part of the government and the bureaucracies that control this society, control Fleet Street. So there is no real coverage about the phenomenal impact racists have on the lives of the people targeted by racism, both in this country and in the context of migration asylum in the countries of origin. And there is nothing about the role of the forces inside the government, in Fleet Street and in Parliament, that have caused the massacre of the migrants in the Channel. So although the although the Times newspaper yesterday did carry the piece about the return of the victims of the massacre, they don't call it victims of the massacre, but they refer to the same people that I'm calling victims of the massacre. They say the migrant boat victims return home to be buried. This is a very sad event. It is so sad that ordinary words cannot begin to express the sadness in the whole kind of totality of the massacre and the background behind the people. It said, the Times yesterday said, that is what they said yesterday. And it's a piece by two people. One is Richard Spencer, who is described as Middle East correspondent of the Times. And the other is Hrs Muhammad in Iraqi Kurdistan, where these persons were buried the day before. And it starts in the first paragraph. The bodies of victims of the migrant boat disaster in the Channel last month arrived back in Iraqi Kurdistan for burial yesterday. And it says in the next paragraph, convoys of vehicles led by ambulances fanned out from Erbil airport across the region on their way to the towns and villages to the east and north from where most of the victims came. Now, to most people familiar across Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, like the Vietnamese boat people who are burnt alive in the van. Most people who are familiar with the dear loved ones leaving their homes for apparently safer, more secure economic and social lives abroad, especially heading towards Europe and North America or Canada. Most people in the villages, which is where most of the people come from, most people familiar with such departures in the villages or from the villages would be horrified if they thought that their loved ones would never be seen alive again and that they would end up being massacred in the way that these victims were massacred. How far are the lives of those people from the founding pledges and aims and declarations of the United Nations? And how far are these from the thoughts of the likes of Celia Walden? What British values does she associate with the behavior of the UK government fronted by Boris Johnson, which caused the massacre? Has she got even any idea about this? No space. So what Private Lie does is appear to be critical of the likes of Marina Hyde and The Guardian, but it doesn't actually blame the likes of The Guardian or the daily buying Boris Johnson crowd for the financial crimes or the Times or the Scum or the Daily Mail. Private Lie doesn't have any space substantial space, that is, establishing the correlation between the racist coverage and racist contents of the Daily Mail, this Mail on Sunday, this scum on Sunday, this Star, which is on the evidence of its contents, we call this scar. So let's see where this scar is scarring the truth, and what it is doing. The Daily Scar is covering Harry's eyes with this is the covering of Harry's eyes. Now, this is not the first time that this Scar has done this. This is on page 7 of the Daily Scar on Tuesday, the 28th of December, which is today. Their excuse for doing that is a false allegation against Harry that he wants privacy, which is actually a repetition of the lies of the Mail on Sunday, for which the Associated Press has been ordered to pay the costs and expenses compensation to Meghan Markle. And this is the scar kind of shamelessly appearing to shame Piers Morgan. And it's a completely artificial kind of piece. It says celebs most outrageous 2021 antiques. We assert that there is no such thing as celebrity. It's a cultural prostitution that is operated for business. For example, the increasing degeneration of the physical images of Madonna, the so-called singer. I mean, the older she goes, the less clothing she has on herself. I mean, how is that cultural? I mean, what kind of culture is that? And it says about Piers Morgan storming off from the ITV company. Well, Good Morning Britain, apparently he said critical things about Meghan Markle and Harry about their interview with Oprah Winfrey. So it says Piers Morgan storms off after being criticized for remarks he made about a pair of publicity-shy ex-royals following their chat with Oprah Winfrey. Piers, above half of the set of Good Morning Britain in March. 2 days later, he quit. Now, this car, whoever is responsible for this kind of series of regular insults against Meghan Markle and Harry, is committing intentional defamatory acts, because they say they're ex-royals. They're not ex-royals. I mean, Harry is not ex-royal. And neither Harry nor Meghan has said that they don't want legitimate reporting. What they have said, and they have been quoted as saying in the last 24 hours, the substance of their criticism of the tabloid press, they say, is that the tabloid press, that is Fleet Street, perpetrates lies and fiction and untruths. That's what they've said. That is not the same thing as publicity shy. How can that be? So the fact that this car is saying that the legitimate, substantial, fact-based, analytical criticism which Meghan Markle makes of Fleet Street, which has been upheld, as I said, because they have the access to money to buy licensed low trader prostitutes. But the fact is that despite all of that, a formal court has actually ruled in their favor. Shows that this car is guilty of the lies that Meghan and Harry have accused the tabloid press of perpetrating. Now, this is the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, this program. And this is the only platform that does that. And our campaign is the only one that has been doing it for a very long time indeed. Our movement started in the 1960s, but it predates the 1960s. The solid foundations of the movement were laid in the 1950s, mid 1950s. So you can count more than 6 decades and more, nearly 7 decades. So that itself is unique, world exclusive. And then you add the substance of the work that goes on and has been going on every single day. Count and count and count. All of this has been going on since way before the biological birth of any of the following: Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, to name two of the most notorious ones. And there is no evidence that any university, any media kind of institute anywhere on the planet Earth, including North America, Canada, the Western European Hemisphere, or anywhere else, has conducted on any basis the diagnosis of Fleet Street, diagnosis of the media, in any way remotely comparable to what we've been doing. And what we do is tell the truth based on the evidence, published, traceable evidence. And the purpose of that, all of that, is to debunk, to expose, to hold to account liars at every level. Liars by the media who continue and serve as an extension, brainwashing extension for the liars in government, in state bureaucracies, in the judicial bureaucracies, in parliamentary bureaucracies. Now we go to today's, yesterday and today's. This is the face of the crossbow radar. Now, we have already posted on our Twitter account that this particular person, the young alleged crossbow assassin, named as Jaswant Singh Chail. Is it Chail or Charlie? Well, this spelling is Chail, but I can see what the others are naming him as. Here is Chail, Chail. There is no mention that we can notice in any of the Fleet Street papers of the religious or ethnic background or identity or antecedents and ancestry of this particular individual. Why is that important? Because we are doing the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. And what we are doing is to take apart the lies and the denials and expose the narrative that the agenda, the narrative that is perpetrated by Fleet Street, via Fleet Street, through Fleet Street. And what they're doing in this cover up about the crossbow suspect is that they're not mentioning what ethnicity, what religion he comes from, or the background, ethnic background, or religious background of this particular individual. Why is that important? Because if this suspect was a Muslim or of Muslim background, then that word, Muslim, would have been the most overhyped word in relation to this individual who allegedly entered the grounds of Windsor Castle with the alleged intention to commit an assassination of Brenda, the Queen Elizabeth II. It matters because as the alleged victim is of Sikh background and his reported father is reported as having expressed grief at the bewildering behavior on the part of his son, shows they are not, the Fleet Street papers and the media are not focusing on the identity, ethnic identity or background of this particular individual. And that is how it should be. Except they would have done overhyped the ethnicity and the religion of this particular individual. If they could describe him as a Muslim, just as his biological father is beside himself with bewilderment as to what has horribly gone wrong with his son, so are the general, the overwhelming majority of the Muslims who are not aware of why acts of criminal intent like this one take place, fronted by somebody who comes from a Muslim background. So the Muslims are not given that benefit of the doubt by the media. The Muslims are implied to be somehow part of the problem caused by the particular Muslim background or Muslim descendant criminal. And that has to be treated as an intentional part of the agenda of the racist anti-Muslim agenda of Fleet Street. Because in this piece, for example, on the Daily Mail front page of the Daily Mail today, 28th of December 2021, they are calling him crossbow intruder, crossbow intruder, not a Sikh intruder. Well, that is the spread on the inside pages. 2 pages of the Daily Mail, but they're not mentioning his ethnicity or ethnic background or religious background. That's again showing that again for a minute. And the main heading is actually giving a benefit of the doubt to his father. Something has gone horribly wrong with our son, says father of crossbow intruder. So there is a very positive description of his family. Friend said Child, a former pupil at Toynbee School in Chandlersford, is very close to his twin sister, who achieved top grades at school and is now studying international relations at university. According to her social media profiles, she shares her brother's interest in the Star Wars films. A friend said that they were inseparable as young children. A former school friend who did not want to be named said they seemed like a normal family. He seemed like a normal lad, really. Nothing to distinguish him from anything else. There was one big incident with him getting in a fight with someone, but that was back when he was 13. Child's parents married in Britain in 1993 and lived in Lancashire and the Midlands before settling in the Hampshire village home they bought for £390,000 in 2015. Neighbors described the family as quiet but very pleasant and said they were shocked to see a huge police presence at the home on Christmas Day. The breach was, then they go on to talk about the breach, that is the Windsor Castle breach. So they talk about the British Empire. That is the thing that is buried in the piece. And it reads as follows. Doctors and detectives are now examining the bizarre footage in which Chale apparently makes various references to the villains from the Star Wars film series. And then there is a quotation: I'm an Indian Sikh, a Sith, Sith. My name was Jaswant Singh Child. My name is Darth Jones, he says in the video. This is understood to be a reference to the enemies of the Jedi Knights, who use the dark side of the Force for evil. Behind Chael in the footage is a framed picture of evil Sith Lord Darth Malgus. Detectives investigating why Chael sought revenge over a century-old massacre of Indian Sikhs visited a number of gurdwaras, Sikh temples across Hampshire to explore whether the teenager had links to organized religion. But he is not thought to have been a regular worshipper and was unknown at the temples in Southampton. So they do know about the connection, although it is not detailed there, but there is a connection between the British massacre of Sikhs 100 years ago and his kind of processing of that information as part of his fascination with the Star Wars films. And more will be obviously published about this connection. So this is the bit about the video he posted. In the video footage, the masked and hooded 19-year-old aims a black crossbow at the camera as he pledges to kill the monarch in revenge for the 1919 Amritsar or Jallianwala Bagh massacre, when British troops killed hundreds of Indian protesters. So that's the Daily Mail, still not calling him a terrorist. And that is very significant. Now, they do make mention about the Amritsar massacre, which is also known as the Jallianwala Bagh massacre 102 years ago. And this is something that even the Indian papers and Indian politicians don't really mention. And the same goes about others in Pakistan, the Pakistani politicians. I mean, Jallianwala Bagh is in Punjab. And that massacre of 1919 is the one that is most mentioned by responsible, conscientious students and observers of the racist empire. But most of the likes of, let's say, Rishi Sunak, an Indian-born politician, don't recognize the fact, let alone the impact of the massacre in Jallianwala Bagh. And the Times has got the heading very sympathetic to the suspect's biological father, who is anguish of cross-pro suspect's father. And they've got a piece in the Times about the deadly weapons being available online for £60. Amazon is selling them. And there is an elaborate kind of diversionary description away from the fact that there is this connection admitted in the Daily Mail, connection with the Jallianwala Bagh massacre by the British or protesters in Punjab. So, what it is saying, speaking from the family home in a suburb north of Southampton, his father said, "Something's gone horribly wrong with our son, and we are trying to figure out what. We've not had a chance to speak to him, but are trying to get him the help he needs. From our perspective, we are going through a difficult time. We are trying to resolve this issue, and it's not easy." Then it goes on this next paragraph. Jallianwala Bagh is the name of the gardens in the Punjab town of Amritsar, northwest India, where British troops opened fire on a peaceful protest and indiscriminately shot and killed at least 379 men, women, and children. Now, that is the massacre, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre of 1919. And they haven't got that in the heading, either in the Times or in the Daily Mail or anywhere else in Fleet Street. It is also revenge for those who have been killed, humiliated, and discriminated on because of their race, the masked figure went on. "I'm an Indian Sikh, a Sith, Sith. My name was Jaswant Singh Child. My name is Darth Jones." That is the same quotation that is contained in the piece in the Daily Mail. The Sith are the villains in the Star Wars films and take on Darth, Darth, as a title. An image on the wall behind the figure in the video is thought to be Darth Malgus, an obscure character from fiction written around the Star Wars films. The suspect's parents are the registered directors of an IT firm and live with the teenager and his twin sister in a house on an estate in the village of North Bedsley in Hampshire. A message sent alongside the Snapchat video read, "I'm sorry to no, I read that again. I'm sorry to all of those who I have wronged or lied to. If you have received this, then my death is near. Please share this with whoever, and if possible, get it to the news if they're interested." A former fellow pupil at Toynbee School in Chandlersford, Hampshire, said that the child had done well at secondary and had been to a posh primary. The 19-year-old, who asked not to be named, said he was nerdy, but not in a way like "I'm so clever." He was pretty normal. She added, "I was in his tutor group for 5 years. 15 minutes every day. I also was in his religious studies class, and he never had many views on anything to do with racism." The teenager was the fifth person to have caused a security scare at Windsor Castle in the past 9 months. So the Times piece goes off the topic about this boy. And this really racist and stupid, dishonest Kit Malthouse has surfaced in the piece. He is described as a policing minister, and he is reported as saying the government did not collect information on whether an offense had been recorded by the police as involving a crossbow. Malta said in April, we periodically engage with the police to assess if they see crossbows as an emerging threat in crime. While tragic when they do occur, the misuse of crossbows is rare, and the vast majority of those using a crossbow do not do so safely and responsibly. What could you mean? So, this is the piece in the Times that actually, in the first paragraph, mentions the Jallianwala Bagh massacre by the British. The father of a teenager suspected of breaking into Windsor Castle with a crossbow after allegedly vowing to kill the Queen in revenge of the Amritsar massacre of 1919 has said, something's gone horribly wrong with our son. Now that's a contradictory, stupid piece by the Times. Fleet Street doesn't mention anything like that. It doesn't mention what the British regimes, colonial regimes in Africa and Asia did to the local people. It never does. Even today, they're not talking about it. They're only referring to that as a background. They're not doing this to show any part of his motivation or any part of his kind of getting in any way impelled to carry out what the video he posted said. Now, wouldn't it be educational for the Fleet Street papers, the UK media, the UK government, the UK Parliament? By UK media, I of course refer to the non-print broadcasting counterparts, like the BBC, by the Sky News, and so on, and the Channel 4. To what extent, I mean, the overhyped kind of departure of John Slow, SLOW, that is our name for him, from Channel 4 News. It has been overhyped in The Guardian as well, as which has mentioned Adam Bolton of the Sky News, along with John Slow, as part of a kind of generational thing. But The Guardian, which hasn't broken a single real significant story about the crimes committed by the British Empire in Africa, in Asia, against the people in the countries they occupied. Channel 4, Sky News, the BBC have not broken one single story about the impact of empire. Now, this boy, I mean, he's British born, and yet, based on what the papers are saying today, the fact that he considered the Amritsar massacre with such seriousness shows that no matter where they're born, the knowledge, if they can get the access to the knowledge about what the British did against innocent children, women, and men protesting, politically protesting in Amritsar in 1919, that they can get genuinely concerned, angered, and outraged about this. And there is a lot of symbolism in that targeting of Brenda being the head of the United Kingdom. That is Brenda. So there is a piece here in the Times by David Brown saying the royals are upset by removal of trusted protection officers. Now that is true and that is factual. But why isn't there a headline about what the empire did? Amazing, isn't it? Because when Thomas Babington Macaulay did his absolutely racistly outrageous educational program about the people of the subcontinent in the 1830s, just over 100 years before the British actually had to leave. We shall come to that again in a minute. Well, a short while, because I'm now going to look at this one because I have called the main course bureaucracy prostitution. And this is the proof. They're not saying it prostitution in the way that I have used the term, but this is what effectively the facts remain. It says senior judges voice alarm after private deal in oligarch divorce. And it says, it's a piece byline to the Times' current legal editor, Jonathan Amis. Senior judges fear that public confusion over one of Britain's biggest divorce cases is undermining judicial power. Well, I'm not going to talk about judicial power because most of the power is abused. So there is no sign of ethics and morality. It's a question of power. But essentially, this actually goes back to my comments about David Neuberger. David Neuberger, I said, and I repeat, played as a prostitute at the bidding of David Lidington, who was the cabinet minister in the name of justice, so-called, when Theresa May was the prime minister. Because Neuberger said, as part of the propaganda for Brexit that Theresa May was promoting, that London would become the center of the world. Let's see what Neuberger is actually. I keep having to look at this because I want to get the exact heading correct. Now, what the headline in the evening, No Standards Standard, reads, dated the 4th of July 2017, is as follows. Brexit could boost London's status as world's legal centre, Britain's top judge says. And this is dated the 4th of July 2017, and the byline is Martin Bentham. Bentham, as I keep saying, is a spy of the UK state machinery. The country's most senior judge has declared that Brexit could boost London's status as the world's legal centre by allowing the courts to respond more swiftly to emerging worldwide issues. Lord Neuberger, the president of the Supreme Court, said that once British judges were left to our own common law devices, they would be able to react more quickly and freely to developments in our fast changing world. Before I go to today's reference in the Times to senior judges voicing alarm over private deal in oligarch divorce, let me just dispel the lie, literally, the untruth that Neuberger uttered, if this particular report is to be trusted. He says that our common law device, this liar is perpetrating a lie on order. The common law device was never, ever precluded from being put into play because of the UK's membership of the European Union. So he's inventing a false scenario and misrepresenting that as the truth. The common law device was never precluded, as I say, from being applied because of the UK's membership of the European Union. It's a very complicated set of issues put wrongly, mistakenly, and misleadingly by Neuberg. Now, here is the piece by, as I say, Jonathan Amis, the legal editor of the Times. And in it, Amis says, it details that the case, they are concerned that a private settlement involving an oligarch will prompt wealthy litigants to think they can buy their way out of court orders, according to correspondence seen by the Times. It details unease in the case of Farhad Ahmadov, an oil and gas tycoon reputedly close to Vladimir Putin, and his former wife, Tatiana Ahmedova. The correspondence suggests that judges are so concerned about perceptions surrounding the case, in which there have already been 15 reported court decisions, that they planned an unprecedented statement to make clear that the judiciary was still overseeing the case despite Ahmedova accepting a settlement significantly lower than the award ordered by the court. However, the parties are understood to have objected, insisting that most of the terms of their deal remain secret. In 2016, a High Court judge ruled that Ahmedova, a naturalized Briton, should be awarded £453 million. It was the largest order in a UK divorce until the ruling earlier this month that Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai, should pay Princess Haque £554 million. However, Ahmedov refused to comply with the 2016 order, forcing his ex-wife to pursue him to various jurisdictions. There was also an attempt to seize his super yacht, Luna, originally been built for Roman Abramovich when it was moored in Dubai. The sniping grew so vicious that Ahmedova this year sued her son, Timo, over claims that that is her son, helped his father hide assets. In addition, a judge froze the oligarch's assets and found him in contempt of court over the original award, so and so on. He goes on. Now, this is all absolutely exposing the idiotic false prostitutional misstatement by David Neuberg. Because these are not ordinary people. These either Princess Haya or Tatiana Ahmedova, former wife of Farhad Ahmedov. These are very wealthy people, just as in the case of the wealth aspect of Meghan Markle I have mentioned earlier. So these are not litigants making use of the common law devices available to the British judges as a result anyway of the UK coming out of the European Union. So what I'm saying is that the newspapers, the Times and others who refer to this kind of oligarch and billionaire kind of litigants and parties, are lying to conceal the fact that the courts, bureaucracies in England, in UK, are not accessible to the ordinary people of Britain, in Britain. So the idea that Brexit was about ordinary people being liberated is absolutely false on all layers and all levels and all kind of criteria, based on all criteria. So the newspapers are lying. And newspapers, of course, do include the Guardian, which is not running this piece that the Times ran yesterday about the victims of the massacre in the Channel. And it has been, I read it yesterday as well, but I'll read this paragraph again today. In Kurdistan, it has set off a debate about how a region established with British and US military support in the early 1990s and once envied for its stability and its share of Iraq's oil income could have become a byword, a synonym I said yesterday, for illegal emigration. 3 of the victims came from Rania, a town in the plains of the foot of the Black Mountains. The mountains are becoming a setting off point for migrants from Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq to cross the Turkish border on their way to Europe. Hundreds of people gathered at the town's mosque for the funerals. That goes off from the use of the Black Mountains to the funeral. Kazhal Ahmad had spoken to a reporter days before her death about how scared she was to make the channel crossing. Her sister said yesterday that they had spoken by telephone the night before her death. We told them to take care and be careful because it was so dangerous. They told us that they didn't have a choice, that this was their last chance at a future. Now we have lost everything. Now this is absolutely horrendous. And there is no sign in any of the coverage of the massacre of the migrants in the channel or their backgrounds, there has been no mention of any significant behavior, conduct to stop the massacres, they stop the murders. There has been nothing done by the United Nations or its agencies. Remember what the founding aims and the purpose of the United Nations were in the 1940s. I have said before, and I say it again, that the current incumbent in the second term in the post of the Secretary General of the United Nations, I have renamed him Gutless. Antonio Gutless. Guterres. The Portuguese name is Guterres, but I call him Gutless. I mean, like in the wake of the news about the passing of Desmond Tutu, the Gutless obviously features as one of the world's, quote, leading figures, expressing his condolence and paying his tributes to Desmond Tutu. The question is, would Gutless have fully and openly and substantially supported the campaign to end the racist apartheid regime in South Africa at the time when whenever he was Prime Minister of Portugal? And the same applies to all the so-called leaders that the likes of the Guardian are mentioning. They don't mention the ordinary people affected by racism. And most certainly they're not mentioning the people who are denied the rights and the justice that the ending of apartheid was supposed to bring about. And they're most certainly not, as far as I can see, the Western ones, the South African ones may be doing so, but I'm looking at mainly the Fleet Street papers and media. They're not talking about the corruption. Because even when Nelson Mandela himself was alive, the regime that he kind of notionally was head of was already sunk in corruption. Now that is something that Fleet Street doesn't really cover correctly. It only opportunistically covers, like its coverage of the Chinese, torture, concentration camp treatment, and mass murders and mass rapes of the Muslim Uyghurs. The Western media only refers to the Chinese breaches of human rights in China only when the West wants to have a go at the Chinese state for other reasons, not motivated by genuine concern for the liberation of the victims of Chinese torture against Muslims. Think about that. Now we move on to the massacre of the Foxes. The massacres of the Foxes were unleashed yesterday in various parts of England. So where is the sign or evidence of David Lammy against the massacre of the foxes. Why do I talk about David Lammy? Because David Lammy has hit the news, at least by The Guardian, as misusing, of course, his kind of role as a nominator, as a proposer for the leadership of the Labour Party of Jeremy Corbyn. He says today, or according to the items I have access today, that he regrets nominating Jeremy Corbyn for leader of the Labour Party. And he says that he would never have nominated Jeremy Corbyn for the leader of the Labour Party if at the time he did nominate Jeremy Corbyn, he had known the things he knows now. Now, how long is the life of a political opportunist that he can do that kind of thing? 5 years ago, he said something. Now he regrets, and he says additionally that he would not do that. He would not do the same thing if he had known 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever the actual time was, in nominating Corbyn, the things that he knows now. Okay, we go back to the racist lying narrative and agenda of the Mail on Sunday and the Associated Press and the rest of Fleet Street. This is the highlighted bit in yesterday's Guardian on page 5 about the item they headed Meghan to receive financial remedies from publisher of the Mail on Sunday. And the highlight of the statement by Meghan and Harry is this. What matters is that we are now brave enough to reshape a tabloid industry that profits from the lies and pain they create. That is the statement highlighted. That is the statement. White against black background, red background with a picture of Meghan Markle. And that is it. This is not about hiding their identity or being shy about publicity, which is what the Daily Star has been falsely stating against Meghan and Harry. And this most certainly is not about either Harry or Meghan denying being members of the royal family. Well, Harry is Prince Harry, of course. So we shall be continuing on all the issues, plus other factually, contextually. We say this about the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, the editions called BabyAngelGeronimo. We describe BabyAngelGeronimo as the world's most ethical, most moral, most neutral, and most reliable, trustworthy witness to the lies and corruption and criminality and depravity of the cabal fronted by Boris Johnson in the name of the so-called government. And everything that Boris Johnson has done wrong, everything that any member of his cabal has done wrong, for years, even predating the appearance of Johnson as the so-called prime minister, has been truthfully witnessed by BabyAngelGeronimo, because BabyAngelGeronimo is the personality, the target of intentional vilification, lawbreaking, and immorality and criminality and cruelty and persecution that took place starting from the time when BabyAngelGeronimo arrived in the UK from his beloved New Zealand, where he was born. So BabyAngelGeronimo was targeted, has been targeted by the liars fronted by Boris Johnson's cabal, and even before Boris Johnson was in place at number 10 Downing Street. Every lie, every untruth, every dishonesty, every deception that has been uncovered has been focused on in the last few months, showing the depravity of Boris Johnson and his cabal, the congenital lying of Boris Johnson and his cabal, every wrong, every evil that has been focused on, including the massacre of the migrants. Everything, in essence, has been witnessed by the BabyAngelGeronimo because of the targeting of him, innocent and completely criminal, unfounded, unjustified, immoral, and evil motivated depravity attacking him has contained evidence of the depravity across the whole government, the whole regime, fronted by Boris Johnson himself, aided and abetted by the political murderer Keir Starmer and his cabal.